Hello, everybody. Welcome to Smark Avengers. My name is Corey, and with me is John. Dylan is absent. I think he's drunk.
Ooh, yeah, I think he's out drinking.
Yeah. I'm not on Instagram anymore, but I heard that his Instagram story was like him acknowledging the fact that he's getting drunk on a Thursday.
Yeah, but don't tell the boys though.
Don't tell the lads. The lads. So yeah, it's just the two of us. And today, we're going to talk about some upcoming Marvel stuff and some Marvel stuff that's already happened. Uh, John, you're going to be kind of the point person on these things. I'm only going to be able to give some insight. But what would you prefer to talk about first? We had Captain America: Brave New World that came out a little bit ago. We've got more trailers for the Thunderbolts that has made its way out there, and we also have coming very soon Daredevil: Born Again. You have a preference?
Indeed. I mean, maybe kick off with some Daredevil, I guess.
Okay. So Daredevil was one of the Netflix shows that came out a few years ago, probably almost a decade ago, right? It's been a
Yeah,
bit.
2015 it debuted.
Jesus Christ. Yep, I was like, man, that just came out 10 years ago. Um, so Daredevil, it was the original block of these Netflix shows. It was Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Punisher, and Luke Cage, and
And don't
Iron
forget Iron
Fist.
Fist. Yeah,
I'm sure they would love to forget Iron Fist.
yeah.
That was like the one of them that really flopped hard.
Oh
And then
yes.
they did a Defenders show, right?
Came between I think the second and third season of Daredevil.
Now it's interesting you say that because wasn't Daredevil the only one that had multiple seasons?
No, I think they pretty much all at least got 2 seasons, but
Even Iron Fist?
even Iron Fist.
Holy hell!
It was only Daredevil and Jessica Jones that got 3 seasons. So
Fair enough. So I watched the first season of Daredevil,
hmm
and Charlie Cox immediately stood out as perfect.
yes,
Like
great
when I think of
casting.
Daredevil, yeah, he was amazing. And of course, this is coming off the last time anybody in the mainstream world heard anything about Daredevil, it was the Ben Affleck led Daredevil.
Yeah, which I think has an unfair bad reputation because I guess like the theatrical cut was pretty garbage, but the
Always the
extended
case.
edition where like they kind of show more of Matt Murdock as a lawyer as well as Matt Murdock as Daredevil, and it kind of shows both sides of the character. That definitely was a massive improvement, and it's part of what makes the Netflix series work so well as well, is because it's not just Matt Murdock fighting crime as Daredevil, but we get to see him fighting crime as Matt Murdock as well, like a lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that those were the scenes that really stood out the most to me were the scenes in the courtroom because it
Mm.
was really well done. It also like really set Daredevil away from a lot of the other stuff that was going on because I mean like Agents of Shield was on TV and I think Agent Carter was on if not
hmm
around that same time period.
Yeah.
Um the Netflix shows stood out because I mean those were on ABC. So that was
Mm.
on basic cable for the most part. But Daredevil being on Netflix, they really got to do a lot more with it
Oh
uh,
yes.
in tone, in language, in violence. I mean,
Yeah, it kind of it that part of it sort of made it feel like it wasn't quite connected with everything else going on, because
well,
Agents of Shield still had that same sort of MCU tone about it, where there's lots of
yes.
jokes and stuff, and but yeah, Daredevil was, yeah, it was ostensibly like spinning off from Avengers and the attack on New York and stuff, but it was
They
only
never
ever,
said it outright.
no, there was like
They called it the
you
New York incident, if I remember.
Yeah. You'd see like newspaper articles on the wall and stuff like that, but no one was like talking about it or
Mhm.
referring to that time that all those aliens started smashing the place up.
Wasn't that fucking weird? Anyway, here's Vincent D'Onofrio as
Yeah.
as the most like down to earth fucking villain I think I've ever seen in a movie or a show.
Yeah.
So
Again,
grounded.
great casting. Like they just absolutely nailed it with him. And he to be fair, he got the chance to kind of really delve into the character as well. Like he wasn't just a one-dimensional villain. You
Like
get
Michael
to
Clark
see
Duncan.
exactly. There's like I think pretty much a whole episode was dedicated to sort of establishing his past as like, growing up in a poor family, whereas his dad was like a miserable drunk or whatever and was like beating his mum. And then, it got to the point where Wilson Fisk snapped and beat his dad to death with a hammer. And that sort of set him on his path to kind of,
I know
becoming the
we were
kingpin.
I know we were talking about Charlie Cox, but let's talk about Vincent D'Onofrio for a moment. Like I
Mm.
said, I didn't watch nearly as much Daredevil as you, but I feel like that almost makes it a testament to how well he did in the role. I mean, he was a very three-dimensional character. I mean,
Mm.
his romance with Vanessa was so well done.
Oh, yeah.
Like he was likable.
Yeah,
And then he'd snap and you'd see that rage and you'd be like, "Yep, okay, that's the villain.
yeah.
That's the villain." But yeah, no, I mean the scene where like when they first meet each other in the art gallery is really,
Mm.
really well done. And then they have that dinner together and it gets ruined by the Russian gangster who thinks he's doing the right thing by coming to Wilson Fisk in person and apologizing and realizing he actually just made the biggest fucking mistake ever.
Yep.
Gets his head carved in with a goddamn car door. Dear God. Like that was like that scene and the scene where that hitman assassin character like impales his own head on a jagged pipe to get out of like having to potentially deal with pissing off the kingpin.
hmm
Boy oh boy, that sets the tone for that show.
Absolutely. Like I say, completely unlike anything
Yep.
else in terms
Yep.
of what Marvel was producing at the time.
I
And
think if
yeah,
you to do a look like we're gonna talk about Thunderbolts, but like just a juxtaposition about like how the Netflix stuff and the Marvel stuff handled stuff. Um, Violence in Daredevil was like really grounded and really gritty and really down to
mm,
earth. And when they showed a little bit of that in the Winter Soldier Falcon show, where John Walker basically decapitates a dude with the Captain America shield, it's
hmm
like grisly and it's enough to like cost him like his life as Captain America. But like, I mean, Daredevil, the one scene that stuck with me in Daredevil was the hallway scene, that hallway fight scene.
yeah, they did a few of them in the end, but that first
That
one
first one,
was, oh
perfect.
yeah,
So,
nothing quite like a good one take fight
yeah,
scene.
absolutely. So, is there anything else that like to say about that you want to talk about with Vincent D'Onofrio? Like, so there are 3 seasons of Daredevil. I only really saw the first one.
Mm.
What's going on in seasons 2 and 3?
Well, at the end of the first season, he's basically arrested and sent to prison. Season two, he's not in it as much because season two is like the first half of season two is about introducing the Punisher,
Mm-hmm.
and the second half is introducing Elektra. So yeah, we don't really see Wilson Fisk until Punisher basically, after killing loads of criminals and having all these sort of philosophical discussions with Daredevil about, how best to approach these criminals and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He
Traditional Punisher talk.
yeah. He sort of willingly gets arrested and then gets put on trial, willingly tanks his own trial as well, while, Nelson and Murdoch are trying their best to defend him. Also, he could get sent to prison, and end up in the same prison as Wilson Fisk, who he kind of approaches and finds out, who was responsible for basically the murder of his wife and kids. And so, he kills that person who's in the prison as well, which opens a door for,
coincidentally enough.
yeah, Kingpin to basically take over the prison. And then Kingpin orchestrates a way for Punisher to escape as well, so he doesn't stick around and kill him too. And then, yeah, I think there's like one scene in that whole series where Matt Murdock, or maybe it was under his Daredevil guise, like speaks to Wilson Fisk, but that's it for that season. But season 3 is where he comes back into it again, where he turns into a FBI informant. And then that's basically a bargaining chip to get him out of prison into like a penthouse suite where he's, effectively under house arrest, but he's got a lot more freedom. And he starts manipulating things to kind of retake power. And he discovers Matt Murdock is Daredevil as well in that season. And so he goes all in trying to kind of frame Matt Murdock, first he tries to frame Daredevil by having him like impersonated by like a psychotic FBI agent called Benjamin Poindexter,
Dexter?
aka, yes,
Bullseye, right?
yeah.
Even though it's Lester, who's the name he usually used.
Well, yeah, I think in the comics he hasn't had.
He's never revealed his actual name.
Yeah, it's been a bit, like
Okay.
shaded over.
I was gonna ask, did they ever introduce Bullseye, considering how important Bullseye is to the lore?
Yeah, but he's never called Bullseye, and he doesn't actually don like a Bullseye costume. But they do follow like a similar sort of path to the comic books where he there's like a fight in the church, and Karen is his target, but unlike in the comics, he doesn't kill her. In this one, like Daredevil
Oh yeah.
saves the day.
So, keep going. Sorry.
But yeah, basically, the way that season ends is like a big 3-way fight between Kingpin, Bullseye, and Daredevil, where Bullseye gets his back broken by Kingpin, and he's like pretty much the last scene of the entire series was him like going into surgery to get it repaired so he could come back.
Okay. So that is where we last left Daredevil in the Netflix era, because one of those things that was it Disney Plus that officially kind of killed the Netflix shows.
Not really. No, I think it was more a
Viewership.
case of, yeah, like I'm not sure if viewership played into it, because you can never tell with Netflix, but like
True.
the production costs and everything, I think they just kind of realized that, they couldn't keep it going on indefinitely.
So as Jeff Loeb was in charge of the Netflix
Yes, I
Marvel
think he
stuff.
was in charge of Marvel TV
Mm-hmm.
as a whole back then.
Yeah, and then they folded all of that under Feige.
Yeah. Basically, yeah, like Marvel were just waiting for the rights to revert back to them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like a period of about 4 or 5 years. They had to wait until they could start using the characters again, which is why, Daredevil didn't show up in the MCU until that
She-Hulk.
little. Well, it was, I think,
Did he show up in something before She-Hulk?
Spider-Man No Way Home, I think, was his first return.
Oh, that's because he shows up as Matt Murdock in that, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember that was a big deal.
Yeah, and then he showed up in She-Hulk and also in Echo, I think.
I totally forgot Echo was a thing.
Yeah, I think most people have. It wasn't a bad
Questionable.
show by any
Just
stretch of the
Echo.
imagination. Yeah, it was just there. Like a lot of the Marvel TV shows, and to be fair, some of the movies as well, there wasn't a whole lot to it.
Yeah. So I remember that was like a big deal because when they got the rights back to Netflix, a lot of people were petitioning for Charlie Cox to continue as Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was like the only. I don't remember anybody doing anything like that for like Luke Cage or Jessica Jones or anything. Maybe
Mm,
Punisher.
yeah, I would say probably Punisher and maybe Jessica Jones as well, because I think that series, especially the first season of it, gets a lot of love, and
Mhm.
deservedly so. That was a really good introduction and adaptation to like a big storyline from the comics as well.
I mean, ultimately, how on earth, they managed to put the Purple Man in a show without making the Purple Man purple. So
Yeah.
good job on that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I remember I saw someone that was like, "Man, what a waste of David Tennant." I'm like, "What the fuck did you want him to do?"
Yeah.
Like, I'm not buying David Tennant playing like any other Marvel character just because of his sheer size and age at this point.
Yeah, yeah. And to be fair, he was like a
He's really good.
really creepy version of the Purple Man. So
Hmm.
what are you
I mean,
complaining about?
yeah, a bunch of Doctor Who fans.
Yeah.
They can't let go. They can't let go of David Tennant as the Doctor. Um, Boy, I was about to say like then Matt Smith showed up in Morbius. They're not having a good run of doctors showing up in MCU.
Well, yeah, and Christopher
Capaldi showed up in.
Eccleston was
Yeah, he was the villain. He's Malekith.
yep, there you go.
Malekith. So he was Malekith in Thor: The Dark World,
Mm-hmm.
and then Peter Capaldi showed up as the Thinker. I think was his character name in Suicide Squad.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, we're just waiting for Jodie Whittaker now. What's she gonna turn up in?
yeah. Just long overdue showing up in something.
Yeah, it's very true. I feel like we won't get into a Doctor Who conversation. I don't know if you personally even care about Doctor Who.
I mean, I watched it loads as a kid when it was on in the
Reruns.
like 80s and stuff, but
Yeah,
I just sort of got into it late when it revived and then sort of fell out of it as well. So,
that's normal. I know a lot of people who are fans of it kind of fell off after Matt Smith or during Matt Smith.
mm,
But we're not here to talk about Doctor Who. We're here to talk about Daredevil. So we get a snippet, we get a tease of Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock in one of the Spider-Man movies. He shows up as Daredevil in the yellow and red costume, which was
mm-hmm,
really surprising in She-Hulk.
yeah.
So now we have Born Again. We get Matt Murdock in one of the Spider-Man movies. We get the yellow and red costume in She-Hulk. Any comments on the yellow and red costume?
I mean, it felt a bit weird, but then like that whole cameo in She-Hulk felt a bit weird. Like there was a big disconnect between that and Daredevil from the Netflix series. It was a lot more lighthearted, a lot more
Incredibly.
jokey. But then I think that is sort of what Marvel were originally planning to do when they were looking to reintroduce the character, was to not necessarily tie it down to the Netflix series, but basically do like a reboot and keep Charlie Cox and
Mm-hmm.
Vincent
Because I was about to
D'Onofrio.
say Vincent D'Onofrio coming back as Kingpin, which now makes you wonder if you're going to get Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin in Spider-Man.
Well, yeah, he's been popping up in other places. Like he was in the Hawkeye mini series, and he was in Echo as well, like a big part in that. So it feels like he's spreading his reach a little bit and encountering all these other characters. But so far, it's just mostly, well, almost entirely been kept to like TV series rather than movies. But I'm sure with an actor of his caliber and like a character as popular as his Kingpin is, I would not be surprised if he starts getting more involved in the movie side of things.
Do you think so? Because like so far, a lot of the villains that have been in the Marvel like movies have all been like really power heavy,
Mm.
or characters like a lot of like with a lot of gravitas to them. Like, I mean, even Ant-Man with Yellow Jacket, it was also somebody that could shrink small. With Iron Man, it was always somebody in an equivalent suit of like a similar intellect.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I don't think they've had like a ground level villain, except for, well, Vulture, I suppose.
I was going to say as well, like to bring it around to Captain America: Brave New World, like the villain in that is the leader basically, and he poses no physical threat whatsoever to anybody.
You got a big old
Um,
head.
yeah, and even I think it's Sidewinder that
Yeah, Giancarlo Esposito.
yeah, yeah. He's just a regular guy. He's like he is a soldier who's an expert at killing people, but he's still just
Just the
a
guy with a
regular
gun.
guy. Yeah, yeah, basically. No special powers or anything. So, I mean, yeah, there are some villains who've kind of crept in uh who don't have that like big power set or whatever.
Do you
But
think that Marvel could use like the Kingpin as a big bad? Like
I
just
think
somebody whose deal is like a lot of money and influence?
yeah, it's the kind of character that, there's surely a place for. I mean, especially with the announcement of a new Spider-Man movie. They've gone really big in terms of like the stories and stuff that they've told, like like the last one at least anyway, with
I
the
mean,
whole
alternate
multiversal thing.
years, yeah.
But if they, bring it back down to a more grounded level, like the first movie was especially, then Kingpin is a great villain to bring into that situation.
True. True, true. So we what do we know about the plot of Born Again? So like when I think of Daredevil, I think of two runs in particular
Hmm.
that have completely separate tones.
Mm.
So of course Frank Miller and the exploration of Catholic guilt, and let's put Mark, or not Mark, but Matt Murdock through the absolute ringer of
Hmm.
conflict and pain and suffering. And then on the opposite end of that, it's probably not as an iconic run as like you would say like a Bendis, but like Mark Waid, when Mark Waid was like bringing Daredevil back in the 2010s, it
Hmm.
was a lot more lighthearted and more focusing on a swashbuckler with like the underlying thing of Matt's ignoring his problems.
Yeah, yeah,
He has a lot of problems and he's just going to ignore them.
yeah.
So do we know based off of what we've seen so far like what the tone's going to be like? Because I mean this is going to be Matt Murdock in the MCU proper.
Hmm. Well, I mean, there's been a few sort of details revealed in interviews with the actors and stuff, and the trailers themselves kind of paint a picture of this very much being a continuation of the tone and feel of the Netflix series, where it's a bit darker than your average MCU like movie or spin-off. But like it sounds as if like the basic starting point of where we find the series when it begins is Matt has basically given up being Daredevil for about a year for some reason that we don't know to begin with, which I guess will be revealed. Wilson Fisk is out of prison, and he is as we saw at the end of Echo, he's basically decided he wants to be mayor of New York to kind of
Oh,
uh, you know um, take power that way. But uh, that's another storyline that they've taken from the
from the comics.
comics. But then, yeah, we all we really know is some of the characters who are going to appear in it again, like uh,
Did they get
Bullseye's.
Foggy?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
Foggy and Karen Page are both back
nice.
after they originally weren't going to be in it, but
Hmm.
after they started production, and then the writer's strike hit, and they started like going back and reviewing what they'd, done so far, they kind of realized, oh, hang on, this isn't working the way we thought it was. And that's when they sort of course corrected and started tying it back into the Netflix series again.
Yeah, I mean those two characters are very big for his backstory and for his supporting cast.
Oh yeah,
They
exactly.
rarely ground him, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
you said
having that history
Bullseye?
as well. Oh, yeah. Bullseye's back. They're introducing a couple of other like love interests from the
Okay.
comics as well. So Kirsten McDuffie is going to be a character in it. Heather Glenn is going to be a character in it. We've got the Punisher showing up at some point. We've got uh, Tony Dalton is basically playing Jack Dukens again. The guy, what's his like superhero name? Swordsman, who he appeared in the Hawkeye series. Was pretty good in that. But they're also going to have the character Muse as well, who's like a serial killer that was introduced in the comics about 5 years ago, who's like sort of like an artist who uh, creates art through killing people, basically.
Fair.
So yeah, it's some connective tissue uh, to the like Netflix series and the cast from that, but they're also bringing in new faces as well.
Fair enough. So, what are your hopes for Daredevil Born Again?
Well, just that we can sort of maintain the pretty high quality of the original series. Because, I mean, that first season especially was really good in establishing who Matt Murdock on Daredevil is and his supporting cast and the antagonistic relationship with Kingpin and everything. And then, the second season was a bit of a mixed bag because, they were trying to juggle a lot of balls by introducing Punisher and Elektra and the Hand, and then sort of setting up for the Defenders as well. Like there was a lot going on there. Whereas the third season was a bit better. It was more sort of bringing it back into focus by having Kingpin as the villain again and introducing Bullseye. So, like, there's a lot of history there that, is there to be played on, and like a lot of unfinished business as well. Like they always planned for a fourth season on Netflix, like the creative team, but
Yeah.
then obviously Netflix pulled the plug and it never came to be. So it's good that we've got this second chance now to kind of uh not finish out the story because they've already announced like a second season of this new uh version of Daredevil, and I think it's just started production as well, so it's definitely going ahead. But it feels like there's stuff to build on with this.
So, I guess this probably should have asked you this question first, but big Daredevil reader. Where would he rank in your pantheon of characters that you like to read?
Oh, very near the top.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So what's it about Daredevil that appeals to you?
Well, like I first got into reading Daredevil when I bought the Frank Miller run, and I really fell in love with those comics. And yeah, so I just started like collecting from there as well. Like there was, Born Again, the series that he did later on with Karen Page coming back into it. And then like a lot of modern day, I say modern day, this was like 25 years ago now, but like that was all spinning off from like those same events. Um like Kevin Smith had his run, and that led into Brian Michael Bendis. And yeah, like all of it, like I've always kind of been drawn to that kind of ground level type heroics, but like a much darker tone than you'd get in like a Spider-Man comic, for example. So yeah, and it's always been interesting, like the relationship with Kingpin, and then the way like the various writers fuck with Matt Murdock as well, like sending him
probably
to
the
prison
most
and
tortured, probably the most tortured like Marvel comics character. People talk about how like Spider-Man gets dicked around. Nothing like
oh yeah,
Murdock.
no, definitely not. So yeah, I think I've actually pretty much got almost all of the entire run of Daredevil collected in trade paperbacks now. Like I think I'm missing basically about 50 issues out of something like what is it?
Good,
Like
a lot.
678 or something like that
Yeah,
that are
a lot.
collected at the moment.
So, so John, in that, I mean, it sounds like they're going about it the right way with
Hmm.
continuing on what they built Netflix, which was really surprising. Because Disney is very big on let's tear this up and do our own thing a lot of the time when it comes to acquiring these other properties.
Mm.
Like, I mean, just look at what they did with Predator and what they've done with Alien and what they've done with like Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's really cool that they are going to continue on with the Netflix run by the sound of it. So we talked a little bit about Captain America. You have seen Captain America: Brave New World. At this point, when this episode makes it out, Captain America: Brave New World would have been out for like a month.
Yeah.
So, first off, what were your thoughts going into this movie?
I was eager to see like what they do with like a new Captain America, because I think Anthony Mackie is really great in the MCU. Like he, especially like I wasn't a huge fan of the Falcon and Winter Soldier series, but like he was great in that as well. Like the sort of push and pull between should he take the super soldier formula and like sort of level up to be on everyone else's level, or could he do
Yeah,
it just as like a regular guy? And that sort of carries over into Brave New World as well, where he's still, kind of wrestling with that decision. But he's holding his own, and he's confident in like his abilities and his position as Captain America. And that's kind of cool to see, like going into it like that, you know, he is basically a fully formed Captain America when we find him.
mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, like the whole promise of it, like the trailers and stuff, made a big show of, you know, the Red Hulk being involved and all that kind of thing. That kind of was disappointing in the end. Like,
Yeah, I saw someone say that like they pretty much showed the entire Red Hulk stuff in the trailers.
yeah, basically. And I don't think they resolved it very well in the movie either. Like it was basically, it felt like it was done to kind of justify bringing in Harrison Ford to keep playing this role that, William Hurt had originally played before he passed away. And B, it was just like, oh, we need something big because, like we were saying, like, the leader is just a regular guy, and Sidewinder is just a regular guy. There was no sort of big superhero kind of clash in the movie. So
Yeah.
I guess that's why, Red Hulk ended up playing a prominent role in those like closing moments, really.
Well, the Captain America movies, for the most part, I mean, Captain America Civil War was all about the fight with Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
And the first movie, there was the Red Skull, which they kind of made out to be an equivalent to him power wise. But
Mm.
like Winter Soldier didn't really have a big supervillain fight.
No, I mean, kind of Cap and Bucky, I guess, a little bit, but even
A
then,
little bit, yeah. Well, Bucky's just a dude with a robot arm.
yeah. And it was, I guess, the bigger stakes there were trying to stop all the helicarriers from, like destroying all the uh, prime targets, whatever it was. I can't remember now. But
That's fine.
yeah.
Gary
It
Shandling
was
was there. He was a member of Hydra. It was weird.
exactly. Uh, so yeah, I mean, this one kind of like it does feel like it was worth the effort, but it at the same time doesn't feel like there was a lot to kind of remember after the fact.
Yeah.
Like,
I remember, I think the cruelest review I saw did just say, like, Captain America Brave New World is neither brave nor a new world. Felt like an old Saturday Night Live skit with Mike Myers as the old woman from New York for Coffee Talk. Um, yeah, no, I remember a lot of what was seen about this. This movie had rewrites, did it not?
yes, basically a similar situation to Daredevil where they sort of saw it wasn't working the way they wanted it to, and a lot of it was, by the sounds of it, kind of done on the fly as well. Like,
Yeah,
and we're wrestling fans. We know Seth Rollins of the WWE was originally supposed to have a role in this, film scenes, like
yeah.
fight scenes up against Captain America. Those scenes got cut, and there is
He
no
was
hint of
completely
him.
removed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because I remember what I saw was like it looked like it was going to be Captain America versus the Serpent Society, which makes Sidewinder
Hmm.
an obvious reason why he's in that movie.
Yeah.
Because, the Serpent Society gimmick is that everybody in it is like snake based.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you want to kind of take it as like a natural conclusion from Hydra, I mean, you could very well have made a story of like these are all former members of Hydra kind of banding together going after Captain America, except that guy's now gone and old, and the guy who used to be Falcon is now Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it does sound like it was maybe a movie that, due to some meddling, it got a little less cohesive. But like, so we talked about like Red Hulk and Sidewinder and stuff, but like, how did Mackie do in the role? Like, what was the Sam Wilson motivation, like, or the theme of the movie?
So yeah, like I say, like a lot of it is to do with him not being like super powered, but it's also playing up on like the history between Sam and Thaddeus Ross as well, because in the earlier movies he got arrested and ended up in the raft, and it
Yeah,
was Ross who basically put him there. So the fact that Ross is now president and Sam is basically working for him, uh, like that brings up a lot of tension between the two characters, especially as like Ross is originally like trying to turn over a new leaf and be a better man and stuff, but then circumstances force him to kind of start losing his temper and falling into some of his bad habits, which obviously rubs up against Sam and causes a lot of the drama between them.
so every now and then I like to think of like how would the MCU have been if Ed Norton had stayed as the Hulk. And part of me thinks that, I don't know, I would have enjoyed the Hulk more. I didn't really care for Mark Ruffalo. So like
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't care for him at all. See, I guess my thing is I thought he was too like charming to be Bruce
Yeah.
Banner,
Mm,
and Ed Norton is just enough like kind of awkward and up his own ass that I could buy him as Bruce Banner.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, actually. Like,
Yeah, because I
Ruffalo
remember.
is more in the MCU mode where he's, like you say, he's charming, he's funny, and
Mhm.
he's more, yeah, I don't know.
Well, so case in point, because we talked about She-Hulk earlier with Daredevil, the scenes where he's like trying to teach Jennifer like how to use her powers and control her strength and stuff. I don't
Mm.
see Ed Norton having that scene.
Oh God, no.
No.
Same
I
as
would have
like that Hulk, Ruffalo's Hulk in, Thor Ragnarok as well. I could not picture
I
Edward
couldn't
Norton in that
imagine
movie.
Ed Norton and Taika Waititi being in the same fucking room.
Yeah.
So I mean that's kind of an excellent point. Hulk was a lot more of a grounded character then, because I mean they also, I mean, Tim Roth's Abomination showed up in
Hmm.
She-Hulk as well. So I guess kind of what my point on that was, it does feel really kind of bombastic, and it is so strange because between Thunderbolt Ross and also the leader with the Tim Blake Nelson, who was in the Ed Norton Hulk movie, it felt like such an odd thing to continue on this movie that is almost 20 years old
Yeah, yeah.
when the main character isn't in the movie whatsoever. Hasn't been in the Hulk movies or playing the Hulk whatsoever. And also, like, has Liv Tyler been in anything MCU related? Like, because I mean,
Nope.
she's Betty.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And she doesn't really play a huge role in this. She's more of a off-screen, like, oh, woe is me, like, Thaddeus Ross is like all beat up because he wants to contact his daughter, but she doesn't want anything to do with him. So it's like this big thing that I guess is supposed to make you feel sympathy for him. And yeah,
You know
she
the
only
character better than to feel sympathy for.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so she only really like not. Well, it's too late now. We already are in spoiler territory, but
The movie's a month old at this point.
yeah, if you
When
haven't
this
watched it,
episode comes out, it's a month old.
so yeah, she only shows up in like the last 5 minutes or something. So it's not like a huge role or anything.
So it's not even, like I said, it doesn't feel like based off just that information, it feels like it's more of a sequel to the Ed Norton Incredible Hulk movie than it has to do with Captain America.
Yeah, pretty
So it's
much.
like, so he didn't even really get to be the star in his own movie in a sense.
It's a weird mishmash of things. Like he, it's the same with a lot of MCU movies where it feels like it's just moving pieces around the board for what's coming up
Future
in the
payoffs.
future. Yeah, because like Bucky shows up at one point and like sort of offhand mentions how he's running for Congress, which I guess is going to be a big part of
Thunderbolts.
Thunderbolts. Yeah, but it's like,
Okay.
okay, where's that come from?
Jesus
Why would he
Christ.
be doing that?
Yeah, why would Bucky be running for Congress? I mean, like, that has everything I've ever read of James Buchanan Barnes in the comics has always indicated that he's way more comfortable still in the shadows.
Hmm.
So it's for that character to be like, "Yeah, I'm going to run for public office," you're like, what's your platform? What does Bucky Barnes feel about like Roe versus Wade? I mean, he's from the 1940s. His mindset's got to be something.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so, any other kind of comments you want to make about Captain America?
Just on that subject as well of like setting things up, they like a big part of the plot is to do with um
Adamantium.
yes, setting up for a certain X-Man appearing at some point, I imagine.
So is it going to be like an origin movie? Because it made it sound like, from what I saw, that they had never been adamantium on Earth until they found this dead celestial in the ocean.
Hmm.
So that would mean that, like, if Wolverine's going to be in it, they're going to have to speed run that part of his life if he's going to be in the X-Men, which I imagine if you're going to make an X-Men movie, you have to put Wolverine in it.
Yeah, but this sort of adds more credence to my theory of
Multiverse.
yeah. Like when we get to Secret Wars and
Yeah.
you start bringing in all these outside characters from like different movie iterations
Do
and
you
stuff.
think? Do you think it's going to be the Wolverine from the TVA from Deadpool and Wolverine?
Yeah, I think so. I
Because I
think
saw like somebody pointed out like there's a scene of Channing Tatum's Gambit when he's like walking through like the battlefield and he looks behind him and you can see in the reflection in his eyes like one of those Doctor Strange portals opening.
oh
So
really?
yeah, so you might not have seen the last of the Channing Tatum Gambit either.
Yeah, I mean I would be shocked if he doesn't appear in Secret Wars like a whole bunch of other characters will. But
He was super over.
I don't know if, he'll still be Gambit in the MCU after Secret Wars, because I think the way that's going to play out is basically just almost doing like a reset of the timeline and give them an opportunity to like recast characters,
Yeah.
maybe like, add some more history to the MCU as well. So mutants have
Well,
been around for longer or
well,
whatever.
and Fantastic Four is clearly going to be is set in a different time period as well.
Hmm.
So that would be their way of potentially bringing the Fantastic Four into the main MCU as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, like, considering Marvel movies have been pretty stale for the last couple of years or so,
well, and
it
considering
does
they've been around for 20 years as well.
exactly. But like, I guess all this sort of scene setting and kind of setting up future things is sort of putting it in a more interesting position now, because the closer we get to Secret Wars and how that like affects everything going forward, I'm sure there's going to be more surprises popping up in all the other like projects coming up as well. So,
Well, that's going to be our good segue to talk about the other project that's coming out soon is Thunderbolts with an
hmm
asterisk. We've
yes,
mentioned we've mentioned Bucky. Bucky is one of the main characters in this. I
hmm
mean, it based off of what I've seen in the trailer, the main characters appear to be Bucky and White Widow, and then
yes,
like the ancillary characters that will get some shine are going to be U.S. Agent and the Guardian, and
mm.
then everybody else seems like fodder.
Yeah,
I mean, for lack
yeah,
of a better word. Somebody pointed out that like in the trailer, you only see Ghost and Taskmaster like a few times, and that's
hmm
they're in the same scene, and they're like, that might be a sign that they don't make it through the whole thing.
yeah,
So totally, what we know about Thunderbolts is this is a group that's organized of kind of characters who are either reformed villains or failures.
mm.
Your reformed villains being, or not reformed villains, but like your villains being Ghost, who was the villain of the Ant-Man and Wasp movie,
Yep.
Taskmaster, who was the villain of the Black Widow movie. Um, are there any other villains? Is it just the two?
Technically, yeah. Like, I mean, you could argue, John Walker was the villain of, uh,
Yeah, but I mean, he wasn't necessarily a villain. I mean, he wasn't like trying to take over the world or anything.
no, no,
He was a guy who got put in a role that he wasn't fit for.
yeah,
And like the trailer that you see there is like him with his kid and like seeing like articles written about him being a failure.
hmm
So you've John Walker, U.S. agent, who is one of the characters from Falcon and Winter Soldier, one of the antagonists.
yep,
Uh, you have Red Guardian, who is also in Black Widow, played by David Haber. Harbor.
hmm yeah, Harbor, I believe.
Harbor. Okay. Um, White Widow, who is also in Black Widow and also in Hawkeye,
Yes.
and Bucky, who's been in a bunch of other shit.
Yeah.
So these characters are all been assembled by Julia Louis-Dreyfus,
hmm
and they are part of a Project Thunderbolt. I believe. I think it's what they're.
Yeah, well, I think the name comes later. I'm not
Yeah.
sure how it sort of fits together, to be honest. But um,
So the
yeah.
character she plays is like usually tied to Doctor Doom, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I thought she was a Shield agent. That or no, I'm thinking of someone else, aren't I? Oh no, I thought she was like a Shield agent who was always like romantically linked with Nick Fury. Um, but
Valentina, let's see. Valentina Allegra de Fontaine,
mm,
director of the CIA. She's in Black Widow, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and Thunderbolts, and also Falcon and Winter Soldier.
mm,
Anyway, regardless, they are the group that's put together, and it sounds like they're on a suicide mission, not unlike the Suicide Squad.
mm-hmm.
And the antagonist of this show looks to be the Sentry. So
Yes.
that's very interesting because the Sentry is a complicated character in Marvel. Because wasn't he like one of those characters that's like, oh, they kind of retconned the Sentry's always been around, but his powers made people forget that he was around.
Yep.
So Sentry's a little convoluted in that sense. He is their version of Superman, or one of their versions of Superman. There's been several
Mm.
Marvel Superman-esque characters. And his whole gimmick is that for every good thing the Sentry does, the Void, which is his alter ego, his other personality, does something horrific in return.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like the pictures that we've seen has been the actor who's playing Bob, like in a like a sort of a patient smock. And then I've been seeing like the most recent trailer, some very like dark things of like people in the city running and like a silhouette of someone flying.
Yeah, yeah. They still haven't sort of outright shown,
Yeah.
the final thing, but there's like, yeah, little hints here and there in the trailers and whatnot.
So so yeah, tonally it looks like it is more traditional MCU kind of humor. It looks like the comedy is going to be from the Red Guardian, and it looks like it's looks from what I've seen the clash between him and U.S. Agent,
Mm,
who's more of the straight man character played by Wyatt Russell,
yeah.
who I'm absolutely a big fan of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same.
And yeah, I mean, do you have any thoughts about this? Because like Thunderbolts is a weird thing for me. I mean, the original Thunderbolts was the group of villains who secretly made up new identities to pose as heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And then they fell in love with the idea of being, or some of them fell in love with the idea of being heroes and reformed.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then later storylines had them as like Norman Osborn's Black Ops team, the
Mm-hmm.
Initiative, the Initiative's Black Ops team, like sort of made up of villains that were just outright villains. So in this, you don't necessarily have villains; you just have people who have dark pasts, like Winter Soldier and White Widow and such.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, do you have any thoughts about Thunderbolts as we're seeing a little bit more than we saw when the last time we talked about it on the show?
Well, I mean, yeah, like I always came into the comic book series kind of late. Like I've never read the original run. I sort of came in around the time of Civil War where
Warren Ellis.
uh yeah, like pretty much around the time where Norman Osborn ended up on the team,
Mm-hmm.
which was what attracted me to it, I guess.
Yeah,
Um but
those
I mean,
storylines are really good. The Initiative storylines, because like I always think of the when they paralyzed Jack Flag
mhm.
because they were like chasing him down because he's not registered, and then Bullseye slips the knife in between his vertebrae.
Yeah, yeah.
Fucking brutal.
But it's not a lot like that in this new movie by the looks of it.
No, it
Uh,
definitely looks like it's lighter.
yeah, which you I guess you sort of expect now with the MCU.
Yeah.
It's got to appeal to a broad audience.
Well, and then you get little things like Daredevil, which appears to be taking a little bit more of the Netflix tone. Then you get Moon Knight. Moon Knight has some brutal fight scenes in it.
Yeah.
Which I'd love to talk about Moon Knight at some point, because I'm still very confused about that show.
Yeah. I think they just recently announced that they definitely aren't doing a second season of it, but
They are not doing a second season?
yeah, that's correct. But
Oh,
it
well,
sounds like the expectation is that Moon Knight will show up in something else at some point.
fair enough. I imagine Oscar Isaac is probably a difficult person to pin down these days.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
So yeah, no, I hope-wise for Thunderbolts, I don't have a ton of expectations for it.
That's
Like I said,
maybe a good thing though. Like
yeah.
going in with no expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of the characters that are in it. I've been a big fan of Bucky since I got into Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I've been reading Captain America since my favorite runs are the ones that went from the late '80s through the '90s, and then but I mean Brubaker and the ballsiest decision in comics to not only bring back Bucky but make him an enemy. Amazing.
Yeah.
So I've been a big fan of Sebastian Stan in that role. I mentioned earlier I like Wyatt Russell. John Walker is like one of my guilty pleasure characters. Even though like this is like one of those first instances where like the comic book version of John Walker and the show version of John Walker are so opposite of each other. Like John Walker in the show appears to be sympathetic. Like he deals with like a bit of an inferiority complex. He's a family man, like he feels like he's let people down. And like John Walker in the comics is an asshole. He's like a notorious dick. So it is a very, very different take on the character. But yeah, I think we talked about it. We've talked about it a few times. Like they really lucked into Florence Pugh because you know that she was not like high on anyone's radar when she was cast in that Black Widow movie.
No, I mean I guess she was most famous for Midsummer at that point.
Yeah.
And she was brilliant in that as well, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, like they really lucked in. She was great in Little Women. Which is not the first time I've talked about Little Women on this show.
Yeah.
But no, she's been great in almost everything I've seen her in. And like I said, they've really lucked out because they got her probably because they were signing people. I think Sebastian Stan said his contract was for 9 movies. So you imagine like they got her for a long time.
Yeah, definitely.
And unlike Scarlett Johansson, she's not afraid of doing a Russian accent. Biggest fucking pet peeve of the MCU was the reluctance of a Russian accent on the Russian spy.
I mean, I guess you could say it might give the game away if she was speaking with a Russian accent.
Well, yeah, when they introduced her as like Tony Stark's new assistant or whatever, I could buy that. Not expose it immediately. Did you ever go back and rewatch that introduction to that character where she like hits a fucking head scissors takeover on somebody?
Yeah.
I always wonder who they got to do that. It's like some low-level wrestler. Or it's a guy in a wig.
Yeah.
So yeah, is there anything else that's coming up I saw some stuff for Wonder Man recently, which is still a surprise to me. We're doing Wonder Man.
Yeah, that is one that definitely seems like an odd choice, but to be honest, I've not really seen anything about that, considering I think it's been in production for a while. Although maybe not as long as Ironheart, which just feels like it's been in production for years and years by now.
I feel like Ironheart is a mistake. I don't have expectations. So, okay, this is an article that Bleeding Cool just put out yesterday. Wonder Man is the best show no one's ever seen, is the title of it. Apparently, it's set for December, its release.
Okay.
8-episode series. It's a new flavor for Marvel. It's straight from the minds of these people I've never heard of. Honestly, it's one of my favorite things ever. I think it's the best show no one's ever seen. And yeah, they're just really hyping it. Who else is in this? Jesus Christ. Wonder Man stars, well, the main, I believe his name is Yahya Abdul Mateen II,
Yep.
who I believe he played Black Manta.
He did indeed.
Sir Ben Kingsley, he's back.
Nice.
Lauren Glazier, Demetrius Gross, Ed Harris, Josh Gad, and Byron Bowers. So yeah, no, it's interesting to me that they're doing Wonder Man, and I'm curious like what take they're gonna do on him. Is he going to be like the scientist guy who failed his dead father's business by going out to Tony Stark, or are they going to go the Hollywood route where he's the actor?
I mean, I thought they were going the Hollywood route, but like, I don't know. Like I say, I've not really picked up much information about this, considering it's been in the works for a while.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
well, I'd assume as well if Ben Kingsley's going to be back in it, like his character is
an actor.
Yeah, so maybe it is Hollywood adjacent.
Trevor. What are your feelings on that reveal years later for Iron Man 3? That the Mandarin is not Ben Kingsley, it was just Guy Pearce.
Yeah. I mean,
and the extremists.
I thought it was pretty funny.
Me too.
Like the Mandarin as a character is a bit
dated.
Yeah, that's exactly the word I was going to use.
Incredibly dated. A little racist, some would say.
Yeah. So yeah, I think to try and bring him in, especially as well with like the rings and stuff, and like the origin for that, and like I don't know, it would have felt weird to kind of insert that into Iron Man's world at that point, I guess.
I will say I did like the monologues he did in the character as that terrorist. I thought like those were really well written and delivered.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you see him and he's got like a little like, what is it? What accent is that? It's not Cockney.
I think it is sort of London based, but because I think he's an Arsenal supporter in that as well, and they're like a London team.
How do you know that?
Yeah.
He's just paying attention in the background.
I think so, yeah.
Fair enough.
Sure I picked it up from somewhere.
Fair enough. Yeah, so it's interesting they're going to bring him back. I mean, I really liked what they did with Abomination when they brought him back. So, that She-Hulk show, a lot of people are still trying to figure out how they feel about that.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was like, not a breath of fresh air, but like it was something different.
Silly.
Like, yeah.
Like, I mean, that's a She-Hulk comic, though.
Exactly.
It's very comics accurate. She-Hulk was one of the original fourth wall breaking characters. I mean, her most famous covers were like, buy my book or I'm going to rip up all your X-Men comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. People got really weird negative about She-Hulk, and I have to assume it was just weird, sad, lonely men in the basement kind of situation.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Did you finish Agatha All Along? Because I remember we talked a little bit about it while you were watching it. Did it?
Yeah,
What were your feelings on that?
I mean, it felt like a long walk for a short drink of water, but like again, it's more about like setting things up for the future than necessarily like telling a satisfying story in its own right. Like this was all about kind of the kid's identity, and then like putting and putting Agatha in like a new place for when we see her next as well. Like, I don't know. I mean, I've spoiled loads of other shit in this thing, so I might as well say she basically dies in it, and but she's like she comes back as a ghost, and she's like sort of the way it ends is her like about to help Wiccan like go look for his brother, basically.
Oh, they're
So
gonna do Speed then.
I believe so. Yeah, it
I
was like
saw.
a big part of the series was him like uh wanting to look for his brother, basically.
So, I saw people hinting like they're like, oh, they could make a Young Avengers because they have Riri, they have Black Panther's little sister. Because like that, well, that's a great topic to talk about. They
Mm.
seem now everything I've seen that they're open to recasting Black Panther now.
Well, yeah, I think they probably should, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that he passed away, but it's a little different. Like, I don't know, because we when trying to say it without revealing the fact that we lost a fucking episode.
Yeah.
So when Christopher Nolan did Batman, Dark Knight, and Heath Ledger died months before the movie's release, that was one of his deciding factors on why he changed the third movie so much. Because originally Joker was going to play a part in
Mm.
that third movie in the trilogy, but he didn't want to recast after Heath Ledger died. Not to
Yeah.
say there were a lack of options for him, because Nolan has a roster of people that are in a lot of his movies, but he still did it out of respect. So when they did Wakanda Forever and Chadwick was not there, obviously any longer, they just didn't recast. Did they explain what happened to T'Challa?
Yeah, he did actually die in like the context of the MCU as well. So I think I can't remember what the explanation was, but he isn't
Hit by a
around
car.
anymore, and his his sister took over the
Shuri,
mantle.
yeah.
Yeah. But it's revealed as well that he had a son who like could potentially grow up to take on the mantle as well. But then you would have thought that would be many years in the
Yeah,
future if
in the
that was the
future.
case.
So the question, and so I have another question regarding Wakanda Forever.
Hmm.
Do you think they dropped the ball on Namor and the Atlanteans?
No, I quite liked what they did there as well, because the trouble was sort of like Namor has a lot of similarities to Aquaman, just in the like general kind of like premise of the
King of
character.
Atlantis.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Except
So
except Namor can't talk to fish because that's how Aquaman beat him in DC versus Marvel. Remember
yeah,
some that giant whale to land on top of Namor.
yeah. I mean, wow, who can argue with that? But like, yeah. So Aquaman, the movie, came out before, uh, Wakanda Forever did. So they kind of beat them to the punch a little bit. So the
Yeah.
fact that they mixed it up and changed like the origins of Atlantis and stuff, and gave it a different feel. Like I quite enjoyed that, and I thought the guy who played him was pretty decent as well. Like captured the arrogance of Namor. Um,
I
and
did like
yeah,
they made him like kind of Aztec.
mm-hmm.
Like I thought that was a good use of like kind of taking a lot of that cultural symbology
Yeah,
into the
yeah,
designs.
absolutely.
But yeah, no, I was just curious because like I never heard anyone say anything about Namor after that movie and before when I remember when they first revealed what he looked like, people were like, "Huh," and like that was
Yeah.
it. Didn't hear about him
Mm,
again. So
yeah. There seems to be a lot of characters that they've introduced and then not done a whole lot with afterwards. Like there was the at the end of the Eternals, there was
Star
a big
Fox,
deal. Yeah, introduced him, and it was like at the end of the last Doctor Strange movie as well,
yeah,
where
yeah.
yeah, like it's like you got Charlie's Theron to show up for 2 seconds just to do that, and nothing has happened since then. So,
I
what was the
mean,
point?
I think they won't ever really touch Eternals stuff again. I think they hinted really. I mean, they hinted at Black Knight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're going to even do anything with that.
Yeah. And like they hinted at Blade as well, and then obviously that's run into
Well,
all
that's
sorts
been
of
cursed.
yeah. So who knows if we'll ever see like a
Do
big
you
screen
think?
Blade?
Do you think it? Well, we've seen a big screen Blade. Thank
Well,
you
I
very
mean,
much.
again.
Not 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, do you think that Wesley Snipes showing up for Deadpool and Wolverine may have put a damper on that?
Maybe. But I mean, that was more nostalgia than anything else. Like, I don't think Wesley Snipes could come back and do like another movie as Blade.
I
Like, it's a
think he
stand.
absolutely would if you asked him.
Oh, I think he would, but I don't think it would.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't think it would work as well as it did back in the day.
Yeah, you know, honestly, that was like one of those. It that took off in such a way that I feel like people still haven't really acknowledged. Like those
Mm.
three Blade movies. Like to think, like yeah, there were three Blade movies. Like Blade was even a huge deal in the comics at that point.
Yeah. Although the third one was garbage.
But you don't like Triple H walking around with robot teeth and a dog?
No, that's not for me.
Maybe that would bring him back for a cameo.
Mm.
I know that first movie, the uh the Blood Rave. People still talk about that Blood Rave.
Yeah, it's iconic.
Great scene.
Hmm.
I think, like I said, we talked about it in our very first episode with volume 3 about like the MCU not reaching its heights that it once had. I still don't know if they're going to do that. I really do think Doomsday is going to be the test for that. I
Mm.
feel like people are optimistic about the Fantastic Four, but I mean, the Fantastic Four, and we're going to talk about it at some point. They've had what 3, 4 failure movies. I
Yeah,
wouldn't call two of them a failure because one of them was successful enough they at least made a sequel.
exactly. Yeah. But
It's
I
not
don't think,
looked back on fondly, but
no, that's the thing. I don't think they were critical successes. Like, there wasn't a lot of people praising them, but a lot of people certainly saw that first Tim Story one. But I'm sure we'll discuss all of that at some
it's coming
point
up
in
at
the
some
future.
point. I still think we should do a let's watch of the Roger Corman. It is on YouTube. We can make that happen.
I would 100% be up for that.
I'd love to see Dylan, probably a very drunk Dylan, react to that movie.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Dylan, I would like to remind everyone that you can check out what he's into by probably if you just search Captain Explody, because you'll find the YouTube channel that he has with all of his game footage on that he did a while ago. But also his book on Amazon, was it The Adventures of Captain Explody?
I believe so.
He's got a second book in the works. Dylan is aiming at having 50 new short stories for it. So look out for that in the future. Again, go to Amazon, look for The Adventures of Captain Explody. So, John, what are you looking at for your movie count for the year?
I am now up to 182 movies.
Very nice.
Yes.
What's your most recent?
It was a movie called The Darkest Hour, which
Oh,
was like an alien invasion movie with Emil Hirsch. It wasn't
oh,
very good.
okay. Wasn't Emil Hirsch? Wasn't he supposed to be like a big deal? I remember he was like a young up and comer.
Yeah.
He was in Speed Racer.
He
Was it
was.
the Wachowskis did that?
Yep.
Can't all
And
be
I think
winners.
he was in Into the Wild as well, which was like, it may have even been nominated for like, a few big awards and stuff. But
Yeah, he was
uh,
also in that Lords of Dogtown, if I remember correctly. It was a skateboarding movie.
yeah. I think you're right there.
That was the first time I heard his name anyway.
Mm.
Um, so if you want to check out John's reviews on the works of Emil Hirsch, then John, where can they find that?
They can find it on Letterboxd at Big John Bowski, or one word.
Nice. One more point on Emil Hirsch. I saw someone say that Austin Butler was the new Emil Hirsch. And I went, don't you put that on him.
Yeah.
I like Austin Butler. I'm a
Austin
fan of
Butler's
his.
been around for a while as well. Like, it's
Yeah.
only really just sort of
Starting to get up there.
Yeah, but he's been around.
As for me, I have my other show, Large Old Cup. Didn't do an episode last week, but that doesn't matter because this episode is going to come out in a couple of weeks anyway. So maybe there is an episode earlier. Who knows? But you can check that out. It's called Large Old Cup. It is a spoken word storytelling podcast. Pure stream of consciousness, a bunch of other S words. But until next time, I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
There it is.